Hi, my name is Grace, and I'm a senior at May South High School. 3 weeks ago, I thought that I was breaking from the school on spring break, but little did I know that was the last time I was walking in and out of the high school, and also saying goodbye to all my friends. It seemed like just overnight that my year just changed, my life just changed, and just everything just came to a stop, and we did not expect anything like that. The rest of the senior year was supposed to look like my senior prom, celebrating with my friends, and then just a couple weeks later graduating high school and just closing this chapter of my life and growing up. And that is looking completely different at this point. Also, after spring break, we were looking forward to talking about prom and graduation and leaving each other and saying our goodbyes and doing all the things that every senior does, but our senior skip day is literally 2 months of senior skip, so I guess that's fine, but we never really got to have a goodbye to teachers or underclassmen, and this celebration time frame has been just sad, but also knowing that we're missing out, I guess. And it's just really hard. I don't really know how else to say it but that. So through all of this, it's been really hard, but God has given me a way to process everything, and then now He's been showing me more things. Something that was cool of our school to do, last week we had a thing called Be the Light, and they lit all of the stadiums that were outside. They lit up all their lights for 20 minutes and 20 seconds to honor the seniors, not just the ones that were playing sports and didn't get a season, but just our class in general. And it was called Be the Light, and it was a movement, I guess, all over the nation. But just to hear, to see that, there's still so many people in our school that don't know Jesus, but all of us Christians that have grown up in the church have always been told to be the light, and that was something that I think speak volumes of what is happening around us, whether it's we see the good in it yet or not. I think that's something to have hope in, and to have hope in Jesus. And also just through this time, God's reminded me just of how good this school year's been, and I'm thankful that I miss it. But the week before spring break, I had the opportunity to it was very spontaneous, but I was able to pray in our library, and I just asked that God would just move in that school, just as an earthquake, that He would just change everybody, whether they knew me or not, whether if it was this year or years to come, just that He would just mark that school with who He is and His authority. And I don't know what that's gonna look like, but I know that God is faithful and that He holds His promises, and so something big is going to happen. So growing up as well, I feel everybody knows what Jeremiah 29:11 is, and some people may think that that's just an overused scripture, but during this time, when I started talking to God just about my feelings, that's a verse that He kind of spoke over me, but also He just allowed me to have a new perspective on it. I feel that verse, we look at it as in the future He will give us hope, and He knows the plans later on, but He showed me more that that verse applies to right now, and just it's for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Through all of this, God is not harming us. He instead is building a new hope into us and letting us realize that He is our hope, and that we can hope in Him, and that whatever comes our way, He's got us, and He's a good God. He's a faithful God, not just to our senior class, but just you all. And so if I could say anything else to my class of 2020, just to be the light, and just to grow a faith and trust in God, and not just rest in being disappointing, but resting in Him and knowing who our Father is.
Welcome, Reliance Community Church. It is a great day to rejoice together in worship. Now, I know that you're probably really missing the comment card, and we miss hearing from you. So go to our website. We have created a digital comment card. Go on there, tell us how you're doing, tell us how God is speaking to you right now during this time. Just give us some feedback on how things are going at home. Tell us how we can pray for you. The staff still prays for all of you every week. So get on there, tell us how you're doing, and have a great Sunday.
All my heaviness side. So heaven is real and death is a lie. I wanna hear voices of angels above, singing as one. Hallelujah. Holy, holy, God Almighty, the great I am, who is worthy
My thoughts trouble me, and I am distraught at the voice of the enemy. My heart is in anguish within me. Fear and trembling beset me. The law of the Lord is perfect, refreshing the soul. The statutes of the Lord are trustworthy, making wise the simple. The precepts of the Lord are right, giving joy to the heart. The commands of the Lord are radiant, giving light to the eyes. The fear of the Lord is pure, enduring forever. The decrees of the Lord are firm, and all of them are righteous. When I am afraid, I will trust in you. In God, whose word I praise, in God I trust, I will not be afraid. One thing I ask of the Lord, this is what I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and to seek Him in His temple. Record my lament, list my tears on your scroll. Are they not in your record? Well, good morning, Reliance. So today we want to switch things up a bit. And it seems to be a new normal anyway, so get used to it, I suppose. But today we want to talk and get into the Psalms a bit. Because what I love about the Psalms is like they express this full scope of human emotion. And what I just read, what I started off with just a moment ago, was 5 different passages from 5 different Psalms. And these writers were experiencing different things. And again, their emotions, it just seemed like a roller coaster. If you ever read the Psalms, you'll see this roller coaster of emotions. And God is always, always constant. And that's what I love about the Psalms. And every time I read a Psalm, it seems like I get this invitation from the Holy Spirit to come to God in all matters. It's like God the Father is telling His kids, hey, come to me. I can handle it. I can handle all your frustrations, your doubts, your fears, your worries, your victories, your joys, whatever it is. I can handle it. And my earthly father, he's a great man, and he exhibited much of this for me. I remember as a junior in high school, I had been driving about a year, and within a matter of 2 days, in the span of this week, I got 2 tickets. And man, I was distraught. Like, I was super anxious. I was thinking to myself, like, I'm going to get my keys taken away. My driver's license is going to be revoked. I'd probably get thrown in juvie. I deserve it anyway. Like, all these anxious thoughts filled me. And I was thinking all these rabbit trails of going on and thinking all these thoughts. And so I remember that second one I got, my dad was coming home from a meeting, and I was getting all worked up and anxious. And I remember when my dad came through the door of our house, man, I just burst into tears because I had all these thoughts and this pent-up anxiousness in my heart. And so I just burst. And I remember that defining moment of what happened. Instead of my dad coming in and pointing a finger and saying, you did this and you did that, how could you, and all this, my dad hugged me. My dad embraced me. And what he said to me was a defining moment in my life. He said, son, yeah, that's a bummer, but life will move on. It's okay. We're going to get through this. And that's, it taught me how my Heavenly Father, it painted a picture of how my Heavenly Father sees me and treats me and views me in love, saying, son, come to me. I'm big enough to handle it all. Let's work through this together. And so here's the tie-in for today. As I've been personally processing this past month and all the ups and downs and the waves of emotions, I feel like my life and your life and all of our lives, it's kind of like walking through the book of Psalms. You see, there are moments in my day, in a matter of 24 hours, there's moments in my day where I'm feeling good, man. I'm feeling joyful, I'm feeling positive. And then just within a few hours, like a wave of discouragement kind of hits. And I'll, oh Lord, where are you? And then I'll have these moments of just pure, utter thankfulness for the Lord and praise. And I'm, oh yeah, it's awesome. And then again, like these moments of doubt weaved in. It's just a weird set of emotions. And so I'm just being honest. And what I think the Lord is doing is the Holy Spirit is ministering to me really through the Psalms. And I think that He wants to minister to all of us through the book of Psalms, of course, through His Word. All of it is awesome. But I think the Psalms is speaking really loud and clear in this time. And every day He's inviting us to come to Him with all of the ups and downs, the waves of emotions. And He's saying, I'm big enough to handle it all. And so this morning, I've asked Pastor Matt, Pastor Aaron and Pastor Tara to just join me. And we want to share just some thoughts and some of the Psalms that are speaking to our hearts right now. And so we're going to be candid. We're going to have a little time of real talk, if you want to call it that. And so we're going to journey a little bit through the Psalms. And so we pray that you'll take just a moment and just invite the Holy Spirit into your home right now. If you're sitting with your kids, your family, by yourself, wherever you're at, and just say, Holy Spirit, speak, for we're listening. And so I pray that you're challenged and encouraged in this time. Well, good morning, guys. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for joining me in this talking about the Psalms and what the Lord's been speaking to you through a psalm, maybe that in this season is really ministering to your heart, encouraging you, challenging you. And so we're just going to start right off, and Matt's going to open us. You're the opener, man.
I'll do it.
Go for it.
I can't pace, so it's going to be a little bit hard. I'll stop. One of my favorite things about Psalms is just the rawness of them. You see emotion, you see just the heart of man, whether that was David or whoever is writing that psalm. You get to see kind of inner person. And I think during these times, I don't know about you, but there's a lot of emotion going on. I think it's day to day. It's one of those like, hey, sun's shining, I'm feeling great. It's cold outside, man, my kids are driving me. Whatever it is, it's kind of this up and down. And so I think it's perfect that we're getting into these Psalms. And I want to start off, we've been doing these family devotions and just kind of getting together, Bible studies, and discussing some things. And this week, I feel like God really just put it all together. I asked the family to all bring something to the table. So, hey, bring a word, something that God's doing in your life. Let's share it as a family and discuss it. And I thought it was so cool on how just cohesive the message was. And so I want to start off with Psalm 121, one of my favorite scriptures and favorite Psalms for sure. And this is what it says. It says, I lift my eyes to the heavens. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot slip. He watches over you. He does not slumber. Indeed, he watches over Israel, will never sleep or slumber. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and your going, both now and forevermore. I just thought, what an incredible psalm for this time. Where does our help come from? Our help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and of earth. Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but there's news and every headline and all of those things. And it's amazing how often we look to man for our help. Yeah. We're looking for the answer of a stimulus check or whatever it might be, and I'm thankful for those things. And if anything, we should be praying for those who are navigating and helping us, in these times. But more than anything, we should know our God is sovereign. Amen. He's in control, and that the truth is. Man, our help comes from the one who's created all things. Yeah. And he's created us, and he knows our inner workings. And scripture tells us how much more will he provide for you and I. Yeah. And so just knowing that our hope and our help is from the one who created all of this. Yeah. And it brings me joy. That's good. And so real quick, I want to share the scriptures that my kids brought to the table on our week Bible study this week. My sweet little Paigey, if you know her, she's just a firework, man. I just see her like ministry rising up in her, and she just comes ready. And hers was 1 Timothy 1:7. We all know it. For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline. And then listening to her explain this was awesome. She goes, when I start talking to friends and these things, there's this fear. And did you hear? And she said, my one response is, yeah, but God didn't give us that spirit. Yeah. And I'm like, come on. Yeah. He did not give us a spirit of fear. And then listening to her explain timidity was like, man, we're not supposed to be not confident. Like that was her definition. Yeah. Confident in knowing we are Christ. And I just think that's really cool. Caleb's, he happened to bring a verse that one of my favorite, if I could just preach out of Colossians all day. I'm an evangelist. So listen to this, Colossians 1:11 through 13. being strengthened with all power according to his glorious might, so that you may have great endurance and patience. And giving joyful thanks to the Father, who has qualified you to share in the inheritance of his holy people in the kingdom of the light. For he has rescued us from the dominion of darkness, and he has brought us into the kingdom of the Son he loves.
Amen.
Wow.
Come on,
that's good.
That's the word. And so, here and Caleb is going, man, the best thing that we can do, and I share this with my kids and my family and my wife, is going, you will never forget this moment in time.
Yeah.
For me, that was 9/11. For me, I remember the time going, around that, but it's also shaped things that we know today are still shaped from that moment. And we're going to see that from this whole time. But I also said, I remember what was influencing me during those times and who I was influencing those. And so that was my challenge to my family, is who and what is influencing you, and what and who are you influencing? Yeah. And so I would encourage you in these times. Our help comes from the maker, the creator, who holds all together. And he is holding us in his hands. Press into him. Press into his promises. Acknowledge those, proclaim those, declare those. And I believe that, man, God's going to use us in this time to influence those around us, to use this as a time to shine for the light of Jesus and the glory of God.
Yeah.
Amen?
That's
good.
good. That's good. It reminds me of Psalm 24:1. It says, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. And so we rest in knowing that God is in control. It's a great word. All right. So by the way, that was really impressive, because if you know Matt at all, he's a pacer when he preaches, can't sit still. And I could tell he was kind of wanting to.
I want to preach.
But you held it together, man.
Thanks.
I'm impressed. And so I want to hand it over to Tara, and she's going to share her kind of favorite psalm and what God's speaking through it.
Yeah, so during this time that I've been asking the Lord for more dreams and visions, not just for myself, but for my kids, for your kids, for our staff, for our entire church body. And he has been so faithful to give me dreams almost every night, like prophetic dreams. And so one night he gave me this dream, and it was different than the interpretation of the scripture that I had had in my mind. And so it's Psalm 23, and I know that's a familiar psalm to all of us, but verse 5 at the beginning of it talks about the table. I didn't even realize you were going to talk about the table a little bit, but when I thought of a table, I thought of, that oftentimes in traditional tables, the wife would sit at one end and the father would sit at the other end, and the kids would be around the table. And I never really put thought to why that was, but just thinking about how the bride and the bridegroom just exchange glances and they're focused on each other. The kids might be running around, it might be chaotic, but there's the constant gaze there. And so this verse says, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. And my interpretation of that before this dream was, I was sitting at a feast that the Lord prepared for me because I'm his favorite, and my enemies are watching and they're not his favorite. And the Lord really showed me that we're all his favorite. We get the opportunity. He provides a feast for us because he loves us, but what we do with his feast is really important. So do we take that feast and do we just feed ourselves with it, or are we sharing the bounty with other people? And so in that dream, someone was sitting next to me who represented my enemy. And so I was at the head of the table, but my gaze was on the Father. And so I had the opportunity to share what I had, what he had provided to me, that maybe they didn't even know how to eat. Maybe they didn't know what the feast tasted like. The word says, taste and see that the Lord is good. So the more we eat, the more we want to eat. Amen. And so, so the message says, you serve me a 6-course dinner right in front of my enemies. But listen to the Passion Translation. It says, you become my delicious feast, even when my enemies dare to fight. And I love that the Father, the Word, is what we're eating. It is our substance that nourishes us. So we have the choice to choose whether or not we share our bounty with our enemies. And we've been given that choice. And so we don't do it just out of obedience, but out of love for the Father. So I just want to encourage you, whatever you're feasting on, make it the Word, make it the Lord. Spend time in prayer, but also teach others how to do that during the season. Teach your kids, teach your neighbors, show them what the joy of the Lord is, how it can be your strength during a time when maybe they're not joyful. So
that's good. Good word. Psalm 23, a familiar one, but powerful. Well, so I'll take the next baton here and run with it. And it was interesting, before this all began, the Lord had me reading in Psalms. And so I kind of started in Psalms in January and was reading a psalm or two a day. And so then this all hit, and it's what reminded me about how we're kind of walking this time as living Psalms almost. Yeah. And so the psalm that really spoke to me recently has been Psalm 62. And I'll just share a few verses from it, not the whole thing, but verses 1 and 2 says this, truly my soul finds rest in God. My salvation comes from him. Truly he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress, and I will never be shaken. Verse 8 says, trust in him at all times, you people. Pour out your hearts to him. I love that. For God is our refuge. And then verse 11 says this, one thing God has spoken, and two things I have heard, that you, O God, are strong, and that you, O Lord, are loving.
Amen.
And so since before, about the time of Christmas, and maybe even before that, my wife and I, Bree, we were struggling with some big decisions we had to make concerning some family dynamics and some choices we had to make. And so, we prayed and we had many conversations, and we didn't feel like we were getting any specific answers. And so we decided that we would just wait. We decided that we would be still, that we would rest in the Lord. And that was a tough choice. That was a tough decision. And so my prayer in January 2020, and I shared it with you guys, is that my family and I, my wife in particular and I, would experience rest. That we would experience emotional rest, physical rest, spiritual rest, and so on. And honestly, we were just tired. We were tired, and so we made a decision that we would trust God and that he would be in the waiting. And when our anxious thoughts would go out ahead of us, that he'd be in the waiting. Yeah. And when our spiritual and emotional tanks, they seemed to almost be empty or tapped out, he would be in the waiting. And so this was not an easy deal, and waiting is not exactly a forte of mine. Patience is not a forte of mine. And so I remember one morning, this was about a week before all this coronavirus hit. It was early March. Maybe the second week of March, and I remember one morning, me and my wife, we were tired, and so we made a decision kind of based on our flesh on one of these big decisions, and I just remember I sobbed. I sobbed like I haven't sobbed in a long time. I cried. I'm not much of a crier, but I sobbed hardcore, and I was a mess, and then 1 week after that, school was canceled, and Bree's work, she's a stylist, that was suspended, and our routine was totally derailed. And so on. And many of you are experiencing that. You've experienced that. Yeah. Your routines are definitely flipped upside down. But something beautiful happened in the last month. In the midst of all this craziness, in the midst of waiting on the Lord and sobbing before him and making decisions out of our flesh, the Lord has been in the waiting. And I think that waiting and that rest, he prepared us for this time, because what we've experienced in this last month, yeah, it's been craziness.
Yeah, that's good.
But it's been more clarity on certain things in our lives that we haven't experienced in a long, long time. And some of those big decisions, they've actually become more clear as what maybe the Lord wants us to do. That's good. And so there's like this beauty from ashes, that kind of thing. Yeah. And so it's no doubt a crazy season, and I still don't know all the answers to everything that we've been seeking. That's good. But the Lord has taught us to rest. He's taught us to wait on him. And he's taught us these two things that David says at the end of Psalm 62, which I love. Yeah. He says this, one thing God has spoken, two things I have heard, that you, O God, are strong, and that you, O Lord, are loving. And I want to invite you into this and encourage you in this and challenge you in this. God is strong. Yeah. He's my strength. He's my fortress. He's my rock. He's my refuge. He's constant. He's steadfast. He's about the only thing steadfast and constant in my life right now. I mean, everything else is kind of this, and he's just the underlying rock and foundation. Yeah. And then two, he's loving. He sees me. He knows me. Yeah. When I sob before him, I can, and he welcomes that. And he just wants relationship with me. And I've been blown away by that. And so rest in the Lord. Wait upon him, and he proves faithful every time.
Yeah. That reminds me real quick, at staff meeting this week, we were just talking, praying through things, just, man, how's everybody doing in this time? And Aaron said something that just meant so much. I'm just thinking, as soon as you said this, like, there's some things God is shining light on, and he is putting to death in this time that we've resurrected these things. And even the church has done this, right? We've resurrected certain things. We're trying and we're striving to make this work because that's how it's looked or been done the whole time. But what God is putting to death, we should leave there.
Yeah.
So that we can focus on those things,
Yeah.
who God is, what he's about,
Right.
and partnering in his kingdom in those things.
That's cool.
Not trying to build from ashes.
Yeah.
And we're an impatient culture anyways, and so the word waiting is the most difficult thing for us. We have a fast pass to anywhere we want to try to get to. We want to get that extra pass that gets us in quicker. And yet in the kingdom of God, there's a beautiful picture that when you wait upon the Lord, he's inclined to hear your cry.
Yeah.
And I just think of that, be still, know that I'm God. And that being still is the hardest part. But he says the result of that is we get to know that he is God. So that's a good word. I think for me, I really felt like in this time when we talked about what kind of a psalm was speaking to our heart, Psalm 139 came to mind. And it's a psalm that we use at baby dedications and children dedications a lot. But really it speaks of our value. And I feel like in turbulent times and in difficult times, when you know how much you're valued, one, how much you value God, but then when you know how much he values you, you feel like a child around like parents where you're going, I know that there's something crazy going on around us. There's that sense of that, but I just feel so valued and comforted and protected. And so maybe sometimes you have a picture of God from bottom to top. You see God's up there. He's big, he's vast, he's huge. We're looking from bottom to top. Psalm really 139 gives us a picture from top to bottom. Yeah. This is God's perspective of how he views you and how he values you. And so if you're struggling with identity, loneliness, fear right now, just encourage you to latch onto these Psalms. And I want to break this one down real quickly into 3 parts. The first part is that God has a knowledge of you, his knowledge of you. Listen to this. Oh Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up, you discern my thoughts from afar. You search out my path and my lying down and are acquainted with all of my ways. Yeah. Even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. That should be a pause for a minute. You hem me in behind and before and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high. I cannot attain it. I read a quote on this and it said the word search me. You search me. The Hebrew word for searched is a word to dig. And I like what it says. Literally what this guy is saying, what David is saying is, oh Lord, you dig me. You've searched me, you dig me. We know that in our slang today, when you say I dig you, it means I know you, I like you, I've been watching. He says, you dig me. And so the word means you dig into me, you search me, you dig into me, and therefore you know me. And so I think it's a beautiful picture that God knows what's going on in your inside. You know, a lot of times on the outside, we've got this facade we're trying to put together. I've got it all together. I'm not worried. I'm not fearful. On the inside, sometimes we feel like we're falling apart. And so God knows you from the inside to the outside, from the outside to the inside. He knows your dreams. He knows your visions. Where you feel unraveled at today, he knows that. Yeah. He knows that. And then he gives us a beautiful word about the nearness then that he brings. He knows you, and then this is what he says in verse 7. Where shall I go from your spirit? Where shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, which is the depths, he says, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me and your right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me and the light about me be night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is bright as day, for darkness is a light within you. I think there's something about being brought to the nearness of God. He searched me, he digs me, and he knows me, and he draws near to me. There's a quote that I read about relationships that says, you are the closest to the people who are most interested in you. God is most interested in you. You are wanted by him. I feel like when you feel the crushing weight of loneliness in the season, when you feel the fear and wonder, does anybody even miss me? Like I don't get to see anybody. I'm isolated in my house. Nobody's calling me. Nobody's asking how I'm doing. If that's you today, I want you to know God cares about you. He sees you. He digs you. He digs you. And there's nowhere that you can escape from his presence. There's nowhere you can escape right now anyways, but there's nowhere you can escape from his presence. And what makes this so encouraging for me when I read this is that because he knows everything that's going on inside of me, and he knows and I want you to think about what that means. He knows the deepest parts that I've locked away. He still has a desire to be near. Yeah. He still has there's times where I feel like, man, I must be wretched. He knows my thoughts. He knows my heart. I must be wretched before the Lord. He sees the ugly and the broken parts. And where I think people wouldn't want to stick around, God says, I want to stick around. You can't flee from me. And so I just want you to hear that no matter what that place is in your life, that he lights that up. There's no pit, there's no trouble that he cannot find you in and bring you out of. And so in these valleys and these peaks, just know that. And then the last part is he says, not only have I searched you and I know all about you, and he desires to draw near. The last part he says, I value you.
Yeah.
Listen to this. For you formed my inner parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm going to pause there for a minute. When he says, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, once he made you, he broke the mold. For every person, there is no other you. You are it. It's why everybody has a thumbprint with a different identity. There is only one print of you. And then he broke the mold. Now listen, wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance, my unformed frame. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. Before any day was laid out, he already knew your life. How precious to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. If I would count them, they are more than the sand. I awake and I am still with you. Let me just tell you, there's something about value. We place value on so many different things. It's funny to me how the things that we place the most value on, we store them, we put them in a safe, we lock them up, we don't mess with them. God sees the value of us and he says, don't lock yourself away. Like, bring those things out. He wants to interact with us. And then I just think about this in the way that this was laid out. I think of the stars in the sky. When I see the sunrise and the sunset, I think of all the most beautiful mountains. I think of the smallest things like the honeybee that pollinates the flowers to make them grow by cross-pollination. I think of all the things that God says about that he created on planet Earth that's so beautiful. And yet what he says about you and I is that he has a gazillion thoughts about us. They're endless. I used to play a game with Trinity and each of our kids about how much we loved each other. I love you more than, and then we would all go. After about 10 things, I would lose thoughts. I'd be like, I just love you to infinity, right? And then the game would end. God never tires of playing the game with us. He has an eternal word to share with us about how much he loves with us. Each and every day. It will never get old playing this game with us of how much he thinks about us. And so in this time of isolation, when you're alone, and FYI, even if you're surrounded with little people in your home, your kids, or you're surrounded with other people in your home, you can still feel alone. And so in this time where you may feel alone, cling to these psalms. Cling to these promises. Think of how much God delights over you. He knows you. He searches you. He digs you. Okay? He has a plan and a purpose for you. He draws near and he values you.
Well, again, we want to say thanks for joining us this morning. We love to open God's Word, see what he has to say. We love just loving on him and worshiping him. And so even if it's virtually together, we just thank the Lord for that opportunity. We do want to give you one opportunity for a challenge and for an equipping moment. And so on our Facebook page and also in the comments on this YouTube live link, we're going to offer about 10 to 13 Psalms. And we invite you, you can do it individually, you can do it as a family. Maybe pick one of those each day, or you can pick one to meditate on for the entire week. But dig into the Psalms and let the Holy Spirit just invite you in. And I just believe he's saying, hey, I'm big enough to handle it all. And so we want to invite you into that. Check it out, our Facebook page, Reliance Community, and then again in the YouTube link here. And so take care, God bless, have a great Sunday. We will see you back next week.